Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Tech 411. Today I'm going to show you my recommended settings for Microsoft Edge to give you the optimal blend of privacy, security, and usability on Windows. Even if you don't use Edge as your primary browser, I highly recommend you change these settings anyway because Edge is built into Windows 11, and sometimes when you click on links or do certain things in Windows, it opens Microsoft Edge instead of your default browser if you use another browser. But first, if you're new here, my name is Ken and I make videos that show you how to get the absolute most out of all of your technology. If that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and click on subscribe and hit that bell so you get notified anytime we add new content. And if you click on like, it'll help others find our content just a little bit easier on YouTube. Okay, everyone, so we're just going to go over here and open up Microsoft Edge. And you could see that I use Brave on this system. That's my primary browser. But even though I use Brave as my primary browser, I still want to configure these settings in Microsoft Edge for two reasons. In case it inadvertently opens when I click a link for some reason, or if someone else gets on my device and uses the Edge browser, I want these settings to be configured so that Edge is hardened a little bit to protect my device. When we go in here, the first thing we're going to be greeted with is profiles. And you don't really need to do too much in here. You can go in and turn off automatic sign-in on Edge. And you can also turn off single sign-on. These will increase the privacy a little bit. If you use those sites that require those services, you may have to come back in and turn those on. The next thing we're going to do here is we're going to click on Microsoft Rewards. We do not want Microsoft Rewards, so we're going to turn that off. And the last thing down here that we're going to do is click on this where it says share browsing data with other Windows features. No, we don't want to do that. So that's going to get us here for the profiles section. When we go under passwords and autofill, I want to turn off the Microsoft Password Manager. I always like to use a dedicated password manager for all of my browsing needs. It's much more secure and it honestly works a lot better. Payment methods, we don't want to save payment info. We don't want to show express checkouts on sites when we shop, and we do not want to allow sites to check if we have payment methods stored. Next, we're going to get into privacy search and services. So under tracking prevention, we're going to go in here, we're going to make sure that tracking prevention is on, and we're going to set it to strict. And when we go down to strict, we want to leave that as our default. If there's any sites that don't work, we can add those into our exceptions down here, okay? And when we set it to strict, it's going to say always use strict tracking prevention when browsing in private, which is also what we want. Next, we're going to go to clear browsing data. Now, if you watched my Brave browser video, I'll link that down in the video description. You'll notice we also had a setting to clear data from the browser on exit. I'm going to do the same thing here. So we can clear browsing data now, but we want this option. Every time we close the browser, what do we want Microsoft to clear? And the very minimum I'm going to set here is cached images and files. Obviously, if this is a system where you don't want to retain any information, you would select all of these. And then every time you close the browser, it's going to completely clean everything. But you can set that to your preferences. Obviously, the less information you save between browsing sessions, the more private your browsing is going to be. Next, we're going to do privacy. And we're going to go in here and turn on the do not track requests. We're going to make sure allow sites to check if we have payment methods saved is off. If you have family safety features, you can set those up in here. There is a certain amount of required data that you're required to send to Microsoft. That's one of the things that I don't like about using Microsoft Edge. Optional diagnostic data should be off. We don't want to help Microsoft improve products by sending them the search results from the searches that we do. And we do not want to allow Microsoft to save our browsing activity, including history, usage, favorites, and web content, to personalize Microsoft Edge and its services. So we're going to make sure that's all off. The only thing we want on here is the do not track requests. Next, we're going to click on security. And under security, we want to be protected from harmful sites and downloads using Microsoft SmartScreen. We definitely want to block potentially unwanted apps. So we're going to turn that on. There is a website typo protection, which I do think is very useful. A lot of malicious websites will register themselves as misspellings of very popular domains in an effort to get you to click on something and then do something nefarious to your device. So I do recommend that you enable that. If you click on the website typo protection, it tells you exactly what it does, and you can learn more from there. We can clear the previously allowed sites. We do want to automatically switch to more secure connections using HTTPS. Okay. Insecure public and private sites is the default. If you use websites on your internal LAN that are not secure, you may have to set this to only alert you about public sites, but unless you need to, leave this on public and private sites. Scareware blocker, we're going to turn that on. And we can turn these features on as well, okay? Enhancing your security. Now, the Microsoft Edge Secure Network is actually a VPN. We're not going to turn that on, but you can turn that on if you plan to use Microsoft Edge as your primary browser. We go into cookies. We're going to allow sites to save and read cookie data. We are going to block third-party cookies. We don't want websites tracking us across other websites. We don't want to preload pages for faster browsing and searching. And down here, we can customize the cookie behavior for different websites. Obviously, you have sites that are not allowed, sites that are allowed, and sites that clear when we close the browser. So that's good to know in there. Site permissions. Here you can go in and check your permissions that you've given to different websites. I do recommend, like I said, with the Brave browser, that you do this at least once a week or once a month. Whatever you're able to do, you should come in here and check this to make sure that there are not sites in there that have access to things like your camera and your microphone that you don't want to have access. And the last item here in this list is the search. So we can use a web service to help resolve navigation errors, but obviously that's going to require sending data. So we're going to turn that off. We are going to turn off the suggest similar sites when a website can't be found. And we are going to turn off the option to save time and money shopping with Microsoft Edge. We are going to leave tab organization on. And then we can come in here and customize our search engine. Bing is the default. I would recommend that you change that to something else. You can go in here into search engines and you can add another search engine in here. But I do recommend you change it to something else besides Google or Bing. When we go under search suggestions and ad filters, we are going to turn a lot of this stuff off. So we don't want to show search and site suggestions using our typed characters. Okay, it does tell us we'll only see suggestions from our favorites in history when we turn this off, which I'm fine with. You can also turn off showing of suggestions from history. We can turn off trending searches from Bing, and then we can also turn off search filters. Okay, under appearance, there's not going to really be anything security related down here, so we're not going to do much in here. Under default browser, obviously, you want to change the default browser if you're going to use Microsoft Edge all the time. If you're not going to use Edge all the time, you don't need to do anything in here. The Start Home and New Tab page, we can show the Home button, which I always like to do, and the Home button goes to the New Tab page. We can also preload the New Tab page, and you can customize the New Tab page when you go on it, which I'll show you in a moment. Languages. Again, I turn off all this automatic stuff because typically that requires sending data to Microsoft about what we're doing, and I really don't want to send them any data unless I absolutely have to. We don't want to use Copilot or text prediction. I do use the grammar and spell check. You can use the Microsoft editor or the basic one, and this you want to make sure that limited is set there. And then after that, everything is good. Ask where to save each file before downloading. Go in here to downloads and turn that on. We don't want to open Office files in the browser, but we do want to show the downloads menu when downloads start. Accessibility, there's a lot of different stuff in here. This all has to do with usability and things like that. Not really too much for me to go into in here. Under System, there's some things you can do in here. Again, the focus here is going to be anything that requires sending of data or collecting of data. I tend to not like that. Most of this stuff, I believe, is probably fine, but you can turn things like the performance detector off. The performance detector is probably safe to turn off unless you're experiencing an issue, and then if you want it to help you troubleshoot, you could always come in here and turn it on for a bit and then turn it back off. We can also enable resource controls. I always like to do this, and we can control how much RAM Edge can use, okay? And right now it has no set limit. We can see this system has 8 gig of memory, but if we want to limit it from bogging our system down, for example, I can set it to a limit of 2 gigabyte, okay? And we can also choose when we want to control the resources, only when gaming or always. And so that's pretty useful. I'm going to leave this back on no limit. And again, we have extensions in here. Obviously, if there's extensions that you didn't install or you don't use, probably want to remove them from the browser. AI innovations, about Microsoft Edge. You come in here and that'll check for updates. And that's pretty much it. And we can do some things up here. But I really don't like Microsoft Edge because it doesn't have a lot of control over these types of things. Well, that's going to do it for all my recommended settings for security, privacy, and usability for Microsoft Edge. Do you use Microsoft Edge as your default browser? Let us know down in the comments section what your settings are. We always love to hear from you down there. Remember to like. It helps others find our content easier on YouTube. Click on subscribe, and when you do, hit that bell so you get notified anytime we add new content. Hug the people you love, and we will see you next time.